He didn't build a bomb. He didn't light a fire. He moved a few sandbags. And for that, a jury sent him to prison for the rest of his life. The only person in his state's history ever convicted of the crime. The disaster he was blamed for killed 47 people and swallowed entire towns. But more than 30 years later, engineers, journalists, and even the man who investigated it are asking the same haunting question. Did James Scott cause one of the worst floods in American history? Or did history just need someone to blame? The summer of 1993 broke the Midwest. Rain fell for weeks and refused to stop. The Mississippi and its tributaries swelled past anything living memory had ever seen. More than 1,000 levees filled up and down the river system. 54,000 people were forced from their homes. Millions of acres of farmland vanished underwater. Damage climbed toward $20 billion, making it one of the costliest natural disasters the country had ever seen. And in a small stretch of the river near West Quincy, Missouri, people were fighting back. Hundreds of them volunteers, National Guards, the Army Corps of Engineers, stacking sandbags in the dark, day after day, trying to hold the water back one bag at a time. Among them was a 23 years old local named James Scott. To everyone out there, he was just another exhausted volunteer. No one had any idea his name was about to become famous. Here's the strange part. By July 16th, the worst seemed to be over. The river had actually stopped rising. It had dropped a foot and a half below the top of the levees. Patrols walked the West Quincy line at 5:30, again at 6. No cracks, no leaks, nothing wrong. It was considered one of the safest stretches of the entire river. Then, at 8:20 p.m. that night, a thin trickle of water slipped through. Within minutes, the trickle became a torrent. The levees didn't just fail, it exploded open. A wall of water tore through and swallowed 14,000 acres of farmland in hours. The force was so violent it sucked a passing barrage straight into the breach and slammed into one of the most famous gas stations there, which erupted into a fireball you could see for miles. Every bridge in the area went underwater. The only river crossing for 200 miles was gone. People were stranded on both sides for months. And investigators had one urgent question. How does the safest part of the river suddenly blow wide open on a night it was finally calming down? Then, a man came forward. An acquaintance of Scott's told police a jaw-dropping story. Scott James had bragged about it, that he deliberately pulled sandbags off the levees and let the river do the rest, and the motive prosecutors gave to the jury was almost too strange to believe. They claimed Scott wanted the bridge to Illinois to close, so his wife couldn't get back across the river. Why? So he'd be free to keep drinking, partying, and fishing with his friends. To sell it, they leaned into who James Scott already was. He was a record petty crime, even arson as a kid. In court, he was labeled as a persistent offender. So when prosecutors pointed at him, a lot of people were ready to believe it. He was charged under an obscure 1979 law almost no one had ever heard of, causing a catastrophe. No one in the state had ever been convicted under it. James Scott was about to become the first. Now, here is what gets uncomfortable. There was no video, no photograph, no physical evidence, not a single sandbag, not a fingerprint, nothing, placing Scott's hands on that levee. The case was built almost entirely on witness testimony, and the jury was asked to connect. The defense told a completely different story. They said that the levees had been drowning underwater for 90 straight days. It was already breaking down. It didn't need a villain, it needed to break, and it finally got one. It wasn't enough. In 1993, James Scott was convicted. His conviction was challenged, so they tried him again, and in 1994, a second jury reached the same verdict. The sentence: life in prison. He has been behind bars ever since. Here is what makes this case impossible to close. James Scott could have walked free years ago. All he had to do was confess. Take a plea, say the words, admit he broke the levees, and the door opens. He has refused. Every single time for 3 decades, he has chosen a prison cell over a lie, over what he insists is a lie. And this isn't ancient history. Scott is up for parole eligibility this year. The question the jury answered in 1994 is suddenly urgently open again. So we're left with two possibilities, and only one can be true. Either a reckless young man drowned a community so he could keep the party going, or the state took the least man in the room and pinned an act of nature on him because 14,000 acre flooded demanded a name. Nevertheless, the Great Flood of 1993 was one of the worst disasters this country has ever seen. But for a lot of people, the real mystery was never how the water got through. It's wherever one man truly caused it, or the truth is still out there, buried somewhere under the flawed waters.